In a world where dying is frequent but yet you can feel unstoppable at the same time, The Surge is a unique high-tech take of the Souls-like franchise, a subgenre if you'd like, created by the Souls series. Frank here, the Red Side Guy, and for those unfamiliar with the Souls-like genre, it basically offers an exhilaratingly merciless take on the action RPG genre. However, The Surge is a game set in the future created by the same developers who brought us Lords of the Fallen, a game which I thoroughly enjoyed despite its flaws. The story kicks off where your character, Warren, takes a train ride to the corporation called Creo. In an overpopulated world where civilization is dying, Creo aims to change this by altering how the world produces energy. After a first very painful and unsuccessful day at the job, our protagonist finds himself in a drone-infested scrapyard fitted with a top-of-the-line exosuit. After a brief tutorial of the controls, you discover a medbay which acts similar to a bonfire from the Dark Souls series. You also meet an NPC who briefly explains to you what had happened to the company and acts mostly like a quest giver in the game. That is about as much exposition as you'll get because most of the storytelling in The Surge are done through various audio logs spread across the game.
We've had issues with Robert Weave again, this time about the exoskeleton program. He's refused to have the implant surgery. We've explained it's hardly invasive, even offered to double as bonus.
There are a few twists later in the game, but most of the story is left for you to discover. It is unfortunate really because those who rush through the game might miss out on a lot of the audio logs, thus they won't get the full extent of the story, and there is an interesting story hidden in between all of the metal scraping apocalyptic world of The Surge. Visually, the game does a fine job at portraying the sparks spewing off enemies, running at a smooth 60 frames per second on PC and PS4 Pro, but 30 frames per second on PS4 and Xbox One. Playing this on the PlayStation 4, I only had a few frame rate drops, but nothing too noticeable. The color palette used to portray this apocalyptic sci-fi world complements the design of the enemies and especially the brutally difficult boss battles. The world itself feels desolated and empty with an eerie feeling of death and uncertainty around every corner. The artists definitely created a world which feels believable and it is visually represented that way. Each weapon is unique in its own right and it's not just another skin slapped onto the same model. The developers did a fine job at making this deserted world feel alive. When it comes to the sound design, the game did not disappoint. The heavy clunking of metal on metal makes you feel each blow of the impact, and the sound each malfunctioning mech spits out is about as real as it gets. Even the explosive and brutal executions has a sound to them that you would probably only find somewhere in a slaughterhouse. The music in particular does a decent job for the setting, but there was one track in particular that I found myself listening to time and time again, hanging around the medbay a little bit longer than I should have. As for the voice acting, since most of the story was done through various audio logs, there isn't much to say other than the fact that it does an average job at best. Your character doesn't really talk much and there are only a few NPCs you interact with. The gameplay was one of the strongest aspects of The Surge. Combat revolves around a light attack, heavy attack, and a dodge as well as blocking. Each move takes a certain amount of stamina, so you'd better be careful when you plan that next heavy attack as it might just be your last one. One of the biggest differences The Surge has over Lords of the Fallen is the fact that you can target individual limbs, allowing you to exploit unarmored weaknesses. Once you do enough damage, the game allows you to perform an execution at the cost of energy by cutting off the targeted limb, which allows you to retrieve schematics or weapons from certain enemies. If you see an enemy with a weapon you don't have, for example, you can target that arm, do enough damage and cut off the arm, which essentially gives you a chance to obtain that weapon. Defeating enemies rewards you with an appropriately post-apocalyptic currency called scrap. Much like Dark Souls, a death in the Surge also sees you having to reclaim the scrap, otherwise it is lost forever. Scrap is primarily used for upgrading of gear and the crafting of items, but should you wish to keep the scrap you have, you can always bank them at the medbay, thus reducing the risk of losing them upon death. Additionally, players can also improve their character by using implants which act as a passive ability. Certain implants require more space and you can use some scrap to raise your core power level, thus allowing you to equip better implants. There is a major sense of satisfaction once you finally defeat a boss you struggled with for hours, but it does take a ridiculously difficult spike about a third into the game, which might put off many new players of the genre. Even though I had many frustrating moments with the Surge, it was still a lot of fun. The game does look to refine what the Souls series did instead of taking it into a whole new direction, but despite that, the sci-fi setting and limb targeting mechanics is definitely a welcome addition, and the combat feels substantially more responsive than the slow-moving brawls that troubled Lords of the Fallen. Usually I rate games at a buy now, wait for sale, look in the bargain bin, or rather avoid rating, and I would say that the Surge is definitely worth buying at a full price. With the new Game Plus mode and the grind for better loot, it is a game that I'll definitely revisit on a number of occasions. It'll be interesting to see if they'll build on the story, adding some DLC or perhaps a sequel in the future, but if you enjoyed this video, then why not click that subscribe button? If you liked this video, then give me a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give me a thumbs down, but please tell me why so I can improve my videos. My name is Frank, I'm the Red Side Guy, and frankly, thank you for watching. Catch you guys in the next video.